welcome back or welcome to my channel. My name is Taylor and today we're going to be doing our July reading wrap up. But before we hop into the video, remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you love all things books. Now, I had a pretty good reading month in terms of quantity. In the month of July, I read, let's see, 1, 2, I think 14 books. I think that's the correct number. I read 14 books. Most of that is due to the fact that I reread all of Heartstopper, so these 5 graphic novels, the 2 novellas, and then I also read Heartstopper Volume 6, so most of that was a reread, and I'm not gonna lie, because of that, most of those books are 5 stars, so my average rating for the month and for the year skyrocketed. So when I actually go over my 5-star reads for the end of the year, I'm not gonna include like 6 out of the 7 of those, but just know that Heartstopper is definitely a 5-star series. But other than that, of the TBR I picked for myself last month, I ended up finishing 5 out of the 6. I did finish that 5th book yesterday, August 1st, so I'm going to put that in my August reading wrap-up because it definitely took me a lot longer to finish than I thought it would. But yeah, so I finished 5 out of the 6. I didn't get to Bourbon and Lies, but you know, that one can also serve as a fall read. You never know. And in terms of my reading for the month, my most read author was Alice Oseman. My most read genre was romance with 9 romances. Then we have 3 fantasies, one of which was a fantasy monster romance, and then 2 dystopian sci-fis. I read pretty much everything physically except for 2 books on Kindle, and then I read majority YA except for 3 adult books, and then I read mostly no spice books and mostly queer reads, obviously, because, you know, Heartstopper. And then my lowest rating was a 4, my highest rating was a 5. I gave 9 books 5 stars, but keep in mind, a majority of those, I think at least 7 or 8 of those, was the Heartstopper reread. But we did find a new 5-star romance this month, as well as, we continued some series that we really do enjoy. But I guess let's go ahead and hop into all the books that I read. Oh, look, the sun is coming out now. You know, if this had come out like 20, 30 minutes ago when I started filming TikToks and everything, that would have been lovely. Because my lighting for those first 2 would have been much better. Oh well, I digress. Let's go ahead and talk about all the books I read in the month of July. And this winter novella I gave 5 stars, and then the Nick and Charlie novella I gave 4 stars. I will say, having read Heartstopper Volume 6, no shocker to anyone, the final conclusion to Heartstopper, I gave this book 5 stars. This novella, if you just want to read the book series and not watch the show and movie, the novella Nick and Charlie is no longer canon to the series following Volume 6. Alice kind of rewrote Volume 6 this was written many years after the Nick and Charlie novella was released, and she wrote this with the intention of sort of giving it the ending that she thought was due. However, Nick and Charlie, if you do want to watch the TV show and the movie, the final movie, Heartstopper Forever, which I ended up giving 4 out of 5 stars, the movie itself does combine this and the Nick and Charlie novella. Overall, yes, I got teary-eyed. I think of the ending of this book, especially the epilogue, was the thing that got me the most. But it kind of interesting because it was kind of flip-flopped in the Nick and Charlie novella. It kind of feels like Charlie was really going through it, but in the volume 6, Nick was going through it. So basically, if you are going to go in and with the intention of watching the show, here is the reading order. You want to read books 1, 2, 3, and then you want to read half or the first part of volume 4. Then in the middle is the This Winter novella. Then you want to continue. Then you want to finish the second half of volume 4, and then volume 5, and then volume 6, and Nick and Charlie. That's basically how it would work out. And if you also want to read about Tori's story, Solitaire takes place somewhere in between books 4 and 5, or around book 5. Solitaire isn't necessary, but yeah, if you don't want to watch the TV series, then you don't need to read the Nick and Charlie novella. It's just kind of more of extra superfluous at this moment. But if you do want to watch the TV series and the movie, then I would read it. Or if you just want to, stay in the Heartstopper world. But yeah, 5-star read. Then, in the name of finishing series this past month, we continued on in the Poppy War series, The Dragon Republic. This is the second book in that series. It is a trilogy, so I can't say too much about this book itself. Just know that the Poppy War trilogy is set during, I think, the Third Opium War, or during the Opium Wars in China, but in a fantastical, fantastical setting. So in the first book, we are following Rin, who is a war orphan from the southern provinces, but she is determined to make it out of her station in life. So she tests into the highest ranking military academy in all of Nekara, and while she's there, she forms relationships and enemies and learns a lot about the magical realm that makes up her life and existence. And of course, during that first book, war breaks out again, and she learns what it means to live a life where all she's ever known is war. And you find you follow a lot of characters who are making some definitely morally gray area decisions, and you don't know whether you love them or hate them, but you still understand them in some capacity. And this second book obviously takes place after the events of the first book, and we're following our main characters of Rin, Neja, and Kate, as they're all dealing with obviously PTSD and trauma because war, especially children during war, you're going to experience a lot. I'm giving this book 4.75 stars. I could have given it 5 stars. I think it's just like there were times when I was kind of feeling the length of this book, and that's my only major critique. So, but do check your trigger warnings for this because, man, do they go through some shit. And all I'm going to say, this may be a spoiler, but I feel for you, Neja. I don't necessarily love all the decisions you made, but Neja, baby, I'm hoping you can come back from this. But also, Rin, love you. Rin, and then Kite, I think Kite might be my favorite character. Of, like, what I consider the core 3, love. But, don't get attached to anyone in that series. Then, after that, we read another 5-star, a 5-star romance. Work for It by Talia Hibbert. You know it's 5 stars because I had to buy a physical copy because I originally read this on my Kindle. This one you do need to check your trigger warnings for because we are dealing with a lot of emotional trauma. It's a very much so hurt, comfort romance. It is a queer romance as well. So we are following Griffin and Olu. So Olu, aka Canes, is dealing with the sudden trauma of being forcibly outed to the world when he wasn't planning on being outed, as well as having his intimate pictures between him and his last partner being leaked and blackmailed against him throughout the world. And so now he's trying to figure out how to navigate life with these new circumstances because a lot of shit went down and he doesn't quite know how to ask for help because he's always the one providing help, but he's never been able to really ask for it or, communicate his emotions. So he decides to take a small little vacation in this really small town in the countryside of England, and while he's there he runs into the very grumpy farmer Griff, who's essentially the town pariah because he's a very tall bear-like black man who's also queer in a small very conservative town, and his mama was known for kind of being a witch or delving into things that weren't so well accepted. And of course, through getting to know each other, they start to learn how to lean on each other. And it's just a beautiful romance. I gave this book 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars and 2 chili spice. I love the way their romance bloomed together. And this is one of a couple of emotional romances that I've definitely got on my TBR, but so far this is probably my favorite I've read, and it's really short, so if you're looking for something short and emotional, this one's for you. Then, as we are continuing finishing series, we read Defy Me by taylormadebooks. This is the 5th book in the Shatter Me series, the 2nd book in Arc 2. Obviously, Shatter Me got picked up for a movie series, TV series. I'm not sure what they're going to go for, but it feels like everyone is currently in the process of reading Shatter Me. And I do plan on finishing the final book in August, and you should see that vlog coming probably towards the end of the month. Defy Me. The first book in Arc 2, book number 4, I didn't love so much because it kind of felt like we were just doing a lot of exposition for what was to come. And it's definitely, if you like Shatter Me and love the characters, Arc 2 is definitely up your alley, because Arc 2 is heavily focused on character, not so much on the plot. But I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars because the romance that's developed and the history and the lore that's developed between Juliet and Warner in this book just had me kicking, giggling, and screaming. And the fact that, like, all 3 of my main characters, my favorite characters, Kinji, Warner, and Juliet, were going through everything possible, I still was like, as the romance girly, I'm like, yes. Also, if you don't know, in this book, we add in a new POV, and now we add in Kinji's POV, and we all know how we love Kinji. And speaking of Kinji, I also read the next novella, Reveal Me. This little bind up here is novellas from Kinji's POV, so the next novella, Reveal Me, takes place during the aftermath of the events in Defy Me. And I'm just gonna say, Kinji, and this may be a spoiler, so jump through a few seconds, Kinji and Nazira, baby boy, I love you. I love your relationship. Y'all two are definitely confusing little people who don't know how to feel your emotions properly or how to communicate well. But hey. So yeah, and then I gave that novella 4 stars. Yeah. Listen, I'm excited to finish out these series come August, but ooh, what am I going to do when Shatter Me's over? Well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the 2nd gen series because James also has a book. Love it. And then the last physical book I finished in the month of July was Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. Obviously, this is the 3rd book in the Legendborn cycle. There is a 4th book coming, however, we don't have a release date, and as of right now, when I checked, we don't have a title or anything, and that 4th book should be the conclusion, so I can't really say much. So this is the last book that's currently out in this published series. The Legendborn cycle is following Bree Matthews. It is set in modern day in the American South, primarily in North Carolina. And she is attending a summer college camp class situation. And while she's on camp, she starts to notice that there's a lot of magical happenings that are confusing her, especially because she started to notice a lot of weird things happening after her mother's death, and she's still reeling with the grief from that. But when she discovers the Legendborn group society on campus, she asks one of the members to essentially sneak her in so she can figure out what's going on around campus and the mysteries around her mother's death, and she starts to learn a lot about herself and deal with her grief. And of course, you know, Legendborn, this is based off of the legend of King Arthur and everything that goes on there. I gave this book 5 stars. When everyone said this was the most romantic book in the series, I was like, where is the romance? But the romance really happens in the second half of the series, because you start to see characters who've been split apart come back together, and it was just chef's kiss. Also, a thing to note, in the first 2 books, you're only following Bree's POV, but in book 3, Tracy introduces multiple POVs, so if you're not used to having to read from multiple characters' point of views, I will say, even though I gave this 5 stars, the plot twist ending, which I don't think is a spoiler, because I feel like if you know Tracy's writing, you know she likes to add some plot twists at the ending, I kind of called. I could see it coming. It wasn't necessarily a shock. It was something that I could see brewing in the back of my head throughout the entire book, especially having read the end of book 2. But with that ending, I'm curious as to see where she takes the plot, the romance, just the character development, because there's another theory that I have cooking around in my head that I still think is a possibility. But hey, I am excited to see how the series concludes. I also do think now, if anyone was to ask me like what's my favorite like at least series or like fantasy series of all time, I think I would point them in the direction of the Legendborn cycle, because I feel like it's a series that pretty much everyone, no matter their age, could love and understand, because it's got that strong fantasy element, that strong emotional relationship development, as well as that romantic element that I feel like a lot of people can enjoy. And then lastly, the only book that I don't own physically, The Fake Divination Offense by Sarah Raish. This is the sequel to The Entanglement of Rival Wizards, and while I guess I think they're pitched as interconnected standalones, you should really read them in order, because there's a lot that happens that is discussed in the first book that plays off of some of the things that go down in the second book. But essentially, we are 4 years after the events of our first book, The Rival of Entanglement Wizards, and you are following Orc. He's an orc. By the way, this is based on D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, so I read it and I was able to, understand everything, but maybe if you're a Dungeons and Dragons D&D player, this might be more up your alley. We're following Orc. He's an orc. He's a major Rawbah player, the big sport in this fantastical world, and he is currently reeling from the trauma of his past. But one night he runs into this cute little, like, pixie of a man, manic pixie dream boy, and he's really intrigued, but he doesn't think anything of it until he is called into the office team management the next day, and realizes that this person is now a cheerleader for the Rawbah team that he plays for, and in order to garner better press for him and his religion that he really doesn't want to be a part of, but now he's become the symbol of, they agree to be a public PR relationship, and of course, from there on, romance ensues. I gave this book 4 stars, 3 chili spice. She was a fun little read. Orc are consent king. The one thing Sarah's going to do is she's going to have consent in a book. They're going to talk you through it and they're going to make sure you're okay. We love that for you, baby. Yeah, love it. It's very swoony. It's very lovey-dovey. The spice is great and everything. I think my main thing with some of Sarah's work is sometimes the plot that is interwoven is so kind of absurd that it's very hard for me to buy into sometimes. But I was feeling very happy and giggly while I was reading it. So if you're looking for something gay, funny, and spicy, have fun. It's also a little more off the beaten path. So go for it, my monster romance people. And seeing as we're getting that Wicker movie, I do think the book talk monster romance girlies might be entering the chat very soon. But those are all the books that I read in the month. Well, those are all the books that I read in the month of July. It was a very good reading month in terms of quantity and quality, because I had a lot of 5 stars. It was kind of sad though, because I am working towards finishing things. I mean, Heartstopper is done for forever, and I'm about to finish out a lot of series coming in August. So, ooh. Lots of last. But let me know what you were reading in the month of July. Did you have a really good reading month, a really bad reading month, a meh reading month? Anywhere in between or on that spectrum, and I will see y'all in the next one.